welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Somerton, and today we're going to be talking about the Florida State Seminoles. And man, it's to put it in as a short and sweet as possible, it's going to be a long season. This is a lost season. And I'm going to try and not be as negative as I possibly can. However, it's time to have a conversation about this team and where it needs to go from here. So first, we're going to review the game. 7.5 point favorites, I believe they were. I think maybe 7. The line was changing. But I believe I think it fell to 6.5 according to ESPN Bet. I believe on Hard Rock it had them as a 7. I think it closed at a 7. So let's just say we're a touchdown favorite. And the final score was 20-12. And the offense looked about as bad as it had all year. The defense made some slight improvements, but there is still a large amount of miscommunication occurring on the field when it comes to the second level with the linebackers and whatnot, and to extent the star play or the nickel. And that recipe leads to the second 0-3 start under Mike Norvell and the second 0-3 start in FSU history. And there's a few records as well. FSU is the first top 10 team to start off 0-3 while losing to 3 unranked opponents. Keep in mind they were favored in every game. FSU's over-under to start the season was 9.5. They have secured the under already. And yeah. I mean, we can get into the numbers real quick. DJ Ungalele, 16 of 30, 201, 1 interception. Malik Benson had that 67-yard grab, the one deep play that they ran successfully, 5 for 99. Kyle Morlock actually caught some passes instead of dropping all of them, 3 for 54. Hakeem Williams made his season debut. He had 3 catches for 16 yards. Ja'Kai Douglas had 1 for 17. Darian Williamson had a few drops, but did catch 1 for 10 yards. Jaylen Brown had 2 catches for -1 yards. His long was 2, so you can do the math there and figure out that the play that he got injured on was completely on DJ. That it was one of those wide receiver screens where the cornerback blew by Ja'Kai Douglas, which I find hilarious in the terms of a play setup, that you have guys like Hakeem Williams, who has shown to be a really good blocker, even though he's only a true sophomore. You got big guys like Williamson, Kentron Portier, guys like that who are on the bigger side, and you have one of your smaller wide receivers in Ja'Kai Douglas trying to block. Yeah, but that's, tiny details. The running game, non-existent once again. 24 for 37. They did have a touchdown from Roydell Williams, who I don't know why he saw the field as much as he did once he had that fumble. You have enough, and the fumble led the game off, So you mainly start off the game in about as the worst way as possible outside of an interception. You fumble it with your guy who is perceived to be your lead back coming into the season. He runs for 5 carries, 6 yards, and a touchdown. You have enough talent in the running back room to not have to play Roydell Williams. You can play Toafili. You can play Kazia Holmes. You can play Cam Davis. And those are just 3 guys. Cam Davis is obviously a true freshman. The fact that he's seeing the field this early is actually really good in my eyes, just to get the kids some playing time. But you have other guys. You have Makai Denzi. You have Sam Singleton Jr. You have other guys that you can play. You don't have to play Roydell Williams. This is the same thing that we're going to talk about with DJ. You don't have to play DJ. Just because you got these guys transferring in doesn't mean you have to play them. I know that there's NIL involved, that some of these guys have a big NIL deal with the Battle's End, another collective, but primarily Battle's End is the main collective at Florida State. But there's some guys who just, at this point, you see what they have to offer and you don't need them on the field. And I'm trying to figure out which fork in the road I want to take right now. We'll just go on the defense. We'll just review the game, like I said, and then just go into the general conversation after that. KJ Kirkland had the start over Shaheem Brown because he was injured. And 9 tackles, 6 of them solo, tackle for loss. He did have a critical penalty jumping off sides on the punt that basically allowed Memphis to burn a few extra minutes in the fourth quarter when you're trying to come back. Justin Cryer had a good game. Joshua Farmer had a good game. He really showed up, and you can see, again, he gets a lot of flack because him and Darrell Jackson Jr. got major NIL deals. And they're not producing on a consistent basis what they need to in the middle of the line. But Farmer had a sack, 2.5 tackles for loss. He showed up today. Patrick Payton had a sack. Daniel Lyons had another sack. And he had 3 sacks and 9 tackles for losses. Again, now we start getting into the conversations. We'll focus on the coaching staff in a bit, but this is where we got to talk about the players. Again, defense did a pretty good job, 32 of 65 for 2 yards a carry for Memphis. What wasn't bad, but they didn't really hold in the main backs. I mean, Mari Anderson, he didn't have a long game, but overall, outside of a few carries, they really held them in check. Seth Hennigan really kind of did what he wanted in the second half. 25, 38, 272, 2 touchdowns. But this offensive, I don't know who's disappointing more. And I'm starting to lean on offensive line now because at least certain guys for the defensive line are showing up. I mean, this offensive line gave up 12 tackles for losses and 4 sacks. And this is going to be in combination with DJ because, again, we've spoken about this in the preview for the upcoming season that we expected a lot out of this offensive line because of the veteran leadership involved. And I know Darius Washington didn't play, but he did suffer one of his worst games. And it was apparently a pregame injury. That's what they're saying. And he wasn't able to play, so you kind of had to play a mishmash of people. And it was just, I mean, regardless of that, you still have TJ Ferguson, Robert Scott. I don't know if Byers played. Jeremiah Byers. You have, did I say Richie Leonard? I know I said TJ Ferguson. And you have all these guys who are big, massive guys, and there's no push. There's no, you are considerably more athletic on paper, apparently, and you're much bigger and stronger and all this stuff. And you just got pushed around. And you couldn't average 2 yards a carry against a group of 5 team? Not a power 4 team, a group of 5. Cam Davis, 5 of 13, long of 7. Lawrence Toafield, long of 24, he had 4 of 30. Kazia Holmes, 1 carry, 4 yards. Come on, what are we doing? And I know you can say, oh, well, they were dragged down by DJ's stats. Again, 7.5 yards per carry, 2.6, 1.24. That negative 1.8 really doesn't make it seem that much better if you take it off. This is this is the concern with FSU is you bring in all these transfers, and don't get me wrong, there's few teams, if any, that have done better than maximizing talent in the transfer portal than FSU. You've had Jermaine Johnson, Jared Verse, Keir Thomas. You've had Braden Fisk. You've had I'm blanking right now if there's any more on defense. I'm trying to think of linebackers or anything. Well, Tatum Bethune was a transfer from UCF, I believe. And then in the back end, you had Fentrell Cypress as cornerback, who's still there. And on offense, you've had Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman. And you've had Jordan Travis. I know he counts as a transfer, but I seriously think he was developed more under Norvell. But you've had Trey Benson. You've had a lot of these guys that, were hits. And it's just, there's just a massive disconnect between this coaching staff and the players and the talent that should be on the field and the talent that should be executing and the players being put in a position to succeed by the coaching staff. It's just this team is so just disjointed right now that whatever can go wrong is going to go wrong. And to me, you're 0-3, the season's shot. This team as currently constructed, in the sense of who you're starting and the bodies that you're putting out there, they're not going to win a game. Maybe the Charleston Southern game. But against the Power 4 conferences, I mean, who are you looking at? Like maybe Wake? Did they even face Wake? I'm sorry, I got to do the whole clicking around and finding FSU's football schedule. I should have had this prepared, but again, we're going to start, like I said, the other podcast, shooting from the hip at this point, like Paulie dangerously. But look at this. All right, so this was the easy part of the schedule too. But you've got the California Golden Bears next week. See how that goes. Then you got SMU, who doesn't really know who their quarterback is, even though they just announced it recently. So there's still a lot of talent on SMU. And that's at SMU, so maybe that makes a difference. You're playing Clemson, who, despite my misgivings about Dabo Swinney, they're not an elite team anymore. That's very clear, but they still have a lot of good prospects on that team. And they still run a fundamental way of football, so this offense ain't scoring on that defense as currently constructed. And it doesn't matter if Clemson doesn't have an offense, it's better than ours. A game, I swear, if you play that game right now, Clemson might win that game 9-0. Then you got Duke, Miami. The Miami game, folks, we're not going to get into that. That's, again, we're talking about currently constructed. North Carolina, maybe. Duke, maybe. Notre Dame, we're not going to win that one. Charleston Southern, we're not going to win that one. The Florida Gators have a shot at beating us because at least they can put 2 and 2 together on offense. If you take Graham Mertz out, you put DJ in, their version of DJ in, they could win. Folks, I expected this team floor 9-3. It seems like their ceiling is going to be 3-9. And again, I'm talking about it in the way the team is currently constructed with DJ at the helm. This isn't all on DJ. Do not get me, misconstrue that. He hasn't been great. There's things he doesn't do well at all. This is his 5th year in college football, and he still doesn't know how to read a defense. He still doesn't know how to call out a defense and help his offensive line make adjustments on protections. He doesn't have the greatest mechanics, but you cannot help it when Kazeel Holmes drops a ball that hits his hands and he's got 2 blockers out in front of him. That play would have been a chunk play, if not a score. Darren Williamson drops the ball. A few games ago, Kyle Morlock was dropping every ball thrown his way. You got to help your quarterback who isn't a game breaker. But again, I know there's an NIL involved with him. I know DJ's been a good person with everything that you've heard from inside the locker room from beat reporters that he's really trying to make this thing work, but it's not. It's not. And you have to start turning to the future. You have to show the high school prospects who, by the way, this coaching staff cannot recruit properly. And we've said that's been a concern for the past few years. You've gone 10 and we'll get to the coaching staff in a bit. I'll get to that later. Sorry. And you have to start playing Brock Glenn. I'm not saying he's going to be a savior, but you need to get him time on the field to see what you have for the future. And I'm not saying you're going to have to play Luke Chrono, because I think Luke is, in all honesty, in all sincerity, no bias, to me, Luke is the future. He's 6'4". He's got the ability to run the ball because, again, he played wide receiver in high school and then he switched to quarterback. So he's got that dual threat ability. And it's clear, and not just in college football, but in the NFL, that dual threat quarterbacks are the way to go. Because what they can do is help your offense out when things break down. It's all about staying ahead of the sticks, getting positive yards. And dual threat quarterbacks can help that. I do not want Luke to play this season, though. I really don't, because this offensive line, this roster is a mess right now. Let Brock get in. Let's see what he can do. That's what I want to see this year. And get some of the young guys in. I feel bad for LaWayne McCoy because he got in there, and for some reason we didn't want to hold the blocks on the punting, and he caused a fumble because one of his guys got pushed into him. Like, I don't really get it. Like, Quindarius Jones, hold your block or just get out of the way, because he's not going to be able to do anything if he calls a fair catch. It's clear teams don't respect DJ's ability to pass the ball or even move. His first quarter stat line was absolutely incredible. Before he threw the pick, he was 5 of 5 for 7 yards. Then he threw the pick. He was 5 of 6 for 7 yards. And it's just, I mean, you're starting to see some stuff change. Jalen Early started the entire game at right tackle. And again, how we talked about, KJ Kirkland started over Devontae Brown, who's a senior. And I know he had the special teams mistake, but still. You saw KJ Sampson play, who the coaching staff has been raving about. Justin Cryer, like I said, he had the only turnover. So him playing significant time at linebacker is a really good thing. And they really, really need to go to that youth movement. And now this is the part where I really just start talking about the coaching staff. And I'm trying not to ramble about that as much as I possibly can, but we're going to take a trip back down memory lane. And we're going to go to 2021, the recruiting class, where our top prospects were the like of Destin Hill, who didn't register until last year, and he's missing all of this year with an injury. So last year was a true freshman 2 years after he was recruited. We got Patrick Payton, who's developed nicely. George Wilson was one of our top prospects. Edge rusher, he's not on the team anymore. Rod Orr, a top offensive tackle talent, he's not on the team anymore. Malik McClain, 6'4", 200-pound wide receiver, not on the team anymore. Omarion Cooper transferred out after a really good freshman year. Well, he transferred out after a few years, and he went over to Colorado, and then he came back this year. Byron Turner's still here, but he's more of a rotational piece rather than a real piece on the defensive line at edge. Jackson West is a glorified blocker at tight end. Chambray Jackson, not on the team anymore. Jordan Eubanks, linebacker, not on the team anymore. We'll get to that linebacker group in a second. Kevin Knowles is still here. Hunter Washington, don't think he's on the team. Joshua Burrell transferred out. Joshua Farmer's still there. Shaheem Brown developed nicely. Bryson Estes, I don't think he's on the team anymore. Oh, no, he is. He still is, but, I mean, he's not really playing. So, I know he's had good reviews, but he just can't see in the field, so I don't know what's going on with that. Colby Gross, not on the team anymore. So how many impact players have you had in the 2021 recruiting class? You could say Patrick Payton, impact. Patrick Payton, Kevin Knowles, I guess, and Farmer and Shaheem Brown. So you have 3 for sures and 1 maybe. Byron Turner, again, he's a rotational piece. But other than that, nothing. So you don't have any production from the 2021 class. 2022, that was the year. 2021, I think, was when you were supposed to get Keldrick Falk and he went to Auburn. 2022 is when you were supposed to get Travis Hunter, and you did not get him. You ended with Sam McCall at safety, who's your highest rated prospect. He transferred out. He went to Texas A&M, and now I think he's in some JUCO school. Lazaria Thomas has developed really well. A.J. Duffy was one of the top QB prospects in the country. He's now at New Mexico State, I believe. And you got Jalen Early. I don't think he's still here, but again, is that the only guy that you're going to get production from? Julian Armello, a legacy recruit, is not even on the 2 deep. He's probably going to transfer out. Quishon Sapp, he transferred out. Daniel Lyons has shown a lot this season so far, in my opinion, where he's had, I think he's up to 2 or 3 sacks. Aaron Hester, when's he going to play? Is he, Ronnie Hill transferred out. Ayo Tifasi, he's not here anymore. Brian Courtney, glorified blocking tight end. Omar Graham Jr., not a good linebacker. Daughtry Richardson, pretty sure he's not on the team anymore. Tavius Woody, not on the team anymore. Jorley Powers, not on the team anymore. Kenya Charlton, I don't think he's on the team anymore. Real quick. Nope, he is. He's a redshirt freshman. But he's not really going anywhere right now. So the transfers this year, I mean, well, we're not going into transfers because, again, we're focusing on the high school recruiting. And then you had the 2023 class. You had Hakeem Williams, who's shown bits and pieces of his future. Lucas Simmons, the team is really high on him. Conrad Hussey, team's high on him. Blake Nicholson, team's high on him. KJ Sampson, team's high on him. KJ Kirkland, team's high on him. Lamont Green, I don't know if he just can put on the weight or what, but they're not really doing anything with him. Broad Glenn, we'll see how he develops, but the coaching staff's like they see from him. Sam Singleton Jr. is buried in the running back room. Goldie Lawrence transferred. Venturius Jacobs transferred. Edwin Joseph still there. Jabril Rawls still there. Andre Otto still there. Team's really high on him. Quindarius Jones, team's high on him despite his mistake. Jaden Jones, Ashlyn Barker, DeMarco Ward, Dylan Brown Turner. And I don't think Dylan Brown Turner's on the team anymore. Here's the problem, folks. All this stuff that I'm reading, how many defensive linemen did you hear? How many playable defensive linemen did you hear? How many linebackers did you hear? It's not a lot. This team cannot recruit in the trenches. I know it looks really good that we can recruit certain skill positions, but again, I don't mean to demean the recruits that we have, but wide receiver, cornerback, those are positions that have a lot of depth in the high school rankings. And you're going to naturally get those athletes at FSU. What you need is to really capitalize on certain abilities of winning and flipping teams or flipping players to your team, and you can't do that. There hasn't been any good linebacker recruiting. There hasn't been any strong defensive line recruiting. The offensive line recruiting is very hit or miss. And we want to go to a youth movement as a fan base, yes. But this is the most concerning part if you really dive into it. Where is the youth? Because you're not going to play a lot of the 2024 class, even though I think you should start looking into it. Amari Williams should play more at tight end. Either Elijah Moore, LaWayne McCoy should start seeing more of the field because, and again, I'm saying like, I don't want to bury these guys completely, but Darian Williamson, Kentron Portier, those older guys, they have already shown you who they are, and so is Kyle Morlock. You know, I'm sorry, Malik Benson, you decided to transfer in the wrong year to FSU, but maybe you could still play it. But again, I really want to see more of a strong formulation of Jaylen Brown, Hakeem Williams, McCoy, and Elijah Moore. This coaching staff is going to have a lot of turnover this offseason, I believe, and it should. I think one of the biggest mistakes that Norvell did was double down after last year in the sense of keeping this coaching staff. I think there's a lot of misses on where this coaching staff should be in the high school recruiting rankings. And I think some easy conversations need to be had and some hard ones need to be had. I think one of the first coaches that need to go is Randy Shannon. I half jokingly tell my friends that I think he's a UM plant. He first destroyed the Gators from within as their defensive coordinator, and he has destroyed FSU from within as the linebacker and co-assistant defensive coach. And I'm half joking about that, but there's nothing on his resume right now that screams he should be on this coaching staff. And you have seen what Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune brought to this defense, where they offered clear communications, athleticism, being in the right place at the right time, and how if you do not have that, how much this defense falters. And it is on Randy Shannon to recruit that and to develop that. And right now, what is there? DJ Lundy, for all his accolades as a run stopper, I don't think he should be on the field that much anymore. He gets picked on. I think, and I will give credit in this sense, it seemed like the coaching staff had a better understanding of how to rotate Cam Riley and DJ Lundy into the game because they can be effective when put in the right spots. But it's clear that you should have the guys like Blake Nicholson and Justin Cryer on the field a lot more. I believe you should keep Patrick Surtain Jr. I think there's a lot of Patrick Surtain, not Jr., because Jr. is getting a boatload of money in the NFL. I believe he increases the ceiling on this team in the back end. I believe he has a lot to offer, and he has a South Florida connection. And again, it's easy to recruit cornerbacks in the sense that there's a lot of them, but he gets a lot of high floor, high ceiling prospects. he is someone who needs to be retained. I don't think Adam Fuller should be retained. But, and again, I've had my misgivings about him for quite some time. I don't like how he calls defense, and I think a lot of that talent over the past few years has covered for it. And now that you need the coaching staff to step up, you are seeing the massive holes that are in place on this defense. Every team so far in this season is running the same concepts of having motion before the snap and then releasing a tight end or a running back with a second or two delay. And you always see two players go after the motion, wide receiver or tight end, and then the running back and or tight end that was being held up for a second pretending like he was blocking. It ends up being wide open either down the middle of the field or on the sidelines to dump it off. It's the same thing over and over again. It pains me to say this. I think you need to pains me so much I can't speak. You need to have a conversation about Odell Higgins because the man is an institution. He's been with FSU through multiple coaching staffs. He's been here since, the Boundary, came through Jimbo, came through Willie, came through Norvell. And again, the players who play for him speak very highly of him. But it gets to a point where what can you point at on the defensive line right now as to the development that FSU offers? We're talking about who was the last guy drafted that was developed by FSU. And I'm not talking about Jermaine Johnson, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk. Yes, those guys have been drafted. Kiara Thomas was drafted as well. Jermaine Johnson was at FSU for a year. Jared Verse was there for 2. Braden Fisk was there for 1. That's not necessarily developing talent, even though I know Jared Verse credits a lot of it, and Jermaine Johnson as well, but Brian Burns was the last one that you fully developed. Josh Sweat, like those guys. I mean, where's the recruiting on the defensive line, on the edges? What do you have to show for it? And on the offensive side, is Alex Atkins going to be retained? He recruits well on the offensive line, but where's the development? Where's the strength? I know strength and conditioning is a different thing, but again, these guys are being pushed back, and I know he's suspended for the first 3 games. Are we going to see a magical return to some sort of competent offense because Alex Atkins is back as the offensive coordinator / O-line coach? When in reality, Mike Norvell calls a lot of the plays. Mike's not going anywhere. Mike is owed almost $70 million after the extension that he received. He is not going anywhere. This team just got over that Willie Taggart contract. They're not going to sign a guy to an extension and fire him after 1 year. They're going to give him time to make it work. But is Mike willing to make it work? And I'm not saying Mike's a bad coach. Mike is a very stubborn head coach. And you're seeing it on the field now. What you need to see from him is how he's going to evolve. This offense can make it can make a good offense great. You saw what they did with the healthy Jordan Travis and Keon Coleman and Johnny Will. You even saw it without Keon Coleman. You saw how explosive this team could be. But I think there's a ceiling to this offense in the sense that you're looking at the team now. On paper, You built this team a specific way, and you can see it. You brought DJ in. You knew DJ wasn't the most accurate quarterback, but you knew he could throw the long ball. And if you can run the ball effectively, you can set up the deep shots. Now, before DJ, this offense was obviously predicated on running the ball well and then setting up, the pass, but not as deep with Jordan Travis. They can't run the ball. They can't run counter. They can't even, at this point, you have to make this team run north to south, not sideline to sideline. Because it doesn't appear that these offensive linemen can come off the blocks well. They can't even push forward well, so what makes you think they can rotate well? And it's just concerning that through 3 games, you've seen about 98% of the time the training wheels on this offense. And there's no adjustments, no adapting to the situation at hand. And this is going to be a long season because of that. Because this coaching staff misidentified the players that were brought in, and they haven't been able to identify the right high school recruits that will stick with the program and develop under them. There's a lot of busts on this transfer portal so far. And there's a kid that I didn't talk about that I think shouldn't see the field right now. And he might be one of the more concerning ones. Marvin Jones Jr. doesn't look like he wants to play football. And this was, again, folks, Marvin Jones Sr. is an FSU great. As I've stated before, the man finished, I believe, 4th in the Heisman in the 90s as a defensive lineman. He's on the defensive side of the ball. Marvin Jones Jr. is a legacy recruit. He was a 5-star out of high school. He went to Georgia. And Georgia didn't really bat an eye when he left. And you're starting to see why. He has all the physical tools. Is the mental part there? Does he really want to be there? Does he really want to be a football player? There's a lot of effort on the field, or lack thereof, that shows he doesn't want to be there. And somehow he's getting a lot of playing time. You misidentified that being a good transfer. You misidentified DJ being a good transfer. Richie Leonard's a good transfer so far on the inside of the offensive line. Roydell Williams hasn't really shown any explosiveness, and it's probably because he's playing behind this offensive line. But has he broken? I mean, I think outside of that one drive where, and I don't even know if that was Roydell Williams, but the drive where they threw it deep to Benson, they hit it off the next play. And it might have been Roydell, it might have been someone else who was starting to break tackles. But before then, I hadn't seen Roydell break one tackle. And that was supposed to be one of his specialties, was being able to cut properly and being able to not be taken down easily. Earl Little Jr. looks lost when he's playing the nickel, or the star position, sorry. And he gets picked on a lot when he's out on the defense. And again, this coaching staff needs to put people in positions to succeed, and they're not. This is the worst outcome you can think of going into the season. And it's not even, this is the worst outcome, and it's not even as bad as you can think of it. It's worse. This coaching staff couldn't recruit top-end talent when they went 10-3 and 13-0. Or let's say 9-3 and 13-0. or 10-3 and 13-1, however you want to put it. 2 double-digit win seasons. The proof of concept is there. You've got Florida, who can't win any games. You had Miami, who had a 5 and a 7 win season. And we talked about in the previous UM podcast, they're hitting on all cylinders right now. What do you think Mario Cristobal and company are going to do, not only in the high school recruiting, but now in the transfer portal? You chose DJ. They never stopped going after Cam Ward, even though FSU wanted Cam Ward as well. You went after Roydell Williams. They went after hard Damian Martinez. But again, you can point at those and talk about the differences. You want to know the biggest difference between the two? Look at the trenches in Miami. Look at how many of them are homegrown. I know you have some transfers from Marshall and Tennessee on the defensive line, but the straw that stirs that drink is Ruben Bain Jr. He hasn't even played this year. That offensive line is made up of a lot of homegrown guys. The part that's going to be interesting to watch now for this FSU team is, what does Mike do with the coaching staff? And do they go to a full youth movement? Because at this point, that's the only thing to look forward to with this team. This is not where I or a lot of people expected this team to be. But it's going to be interesting to see where the team goes from here. Who are the leaders? Who's going to step up? And can the young guys step up? I'm really glad I got through this, because I thought it was going to be a lot harder, a lot harsher. But I think after taking a day to record this episode, I feel a lot more calm about this team. And like I said, we'll see where it goes from here. And I'm really looking forward to this Cal game for a lot of different reasons. Again, one thing you could have bet on was Mike Norvell coming off a bye week. He was 9-2 coming off a bye week, and the team on offense looked worse. And this was the team you were supposed to push around. And you did. So that's it for today's episode. You guys know the drill. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. You can find us there. It's a long-winded one, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, do all that positive stuff. And we'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights. Have a good one, folks.